Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you all about the latest from Nightwish, Human Nature, out right now on Nuclear Blast. The first disc has 9 tracks, 50 minutes in length. The second disc has 8 tracks, 30 minutes in length. And this is the band's 9th full-length studio album. Buckle in, there's a lot to talk about, there's a lot to digest from this record. And join me for the ride. I want to start off by saying that this to me is not a concept album. I thought this was going to be a concept album, so at least that was the perception that I had from the singles and from everything that I had read about the album. But after listening to it, it doesn't feel to me like this is a concept album. It feels like there are some themes that are cross-pollinate from song to song and even from disc to disc, but overall this is not, in my opinion, a concept record. This one, I would call it human. It really has a great fluidity, great playability from song to song, great structure. It's really dynamic. You have here 9 independent songs with independent structure, independent approach, independent sound, sometimes really feeling like completely different from each other, but they're all still branches of a single tree. This disc feels to me almost like a greatest hits of Nightwish with new songs. It really has that style, that approach. It isn't a disc that has a cohesive fluidity to it. It has great fluidity to it, but it's not because all the songs follow a similar pattern or follow a similar sound or a similar approach. Just the way some of the same elements are used allow the album to have that continuity between tracks, but overall is a record that plays almost as one single record with 9 independent songs, and like I said, feeling almost like a greatest hits made up of brand new songs. And I think the reason why it has that feel is because this album is really designed to get the best out of each and every single member of the band. When you look at this first disc, you really get that they had this conscious effort of not writing this album out for 1 or 2 elements or 1 or 2 band members to have a predominant role or to be the main actors of this play. This is an album where, to me, the band really comes together as a band. Perhaps the album, in my opinion, from Nightwish, where it's more of a band effort than not necessarily the effort of a few that then escalates to the many. I really feel that strongly about this record, and to me this is the key to the success of this album. An album that is designed as a band, to be played as a band, to be to allow each member of the band to really showcase their talent, almost like each member has their own single or multiple singles within this first disc. And that goes back to the point that I had about this being a greatest hits. If you look at the history of the band and you are to pull some of their best songs and create a greatest hits album, some of those songs are going to have some main actors. They're going to have somebody who's going to have a predominant role in that specific song. So if you take that idea, if you take that concept and now you apply that to this album, you have the same style, because you have songs that are really geared towards certain band members, allowing each one of them to have at least one single throughout this first disc. This allows the album to be very dynamic, very fluid, very independent on a track-by-track basis, but then because of how they construct the record and of the elements that they throw at each and every single song, allows these 9 wild stallion tracks to still be brought in together as a herd and be controlled as one single record. Having 3 vocalists on a band is always a plus, at least if all 3 of them are magnificent. I have to say mea culpa on Harvest, because that was a song that I was very critical of when the single first came out. After listening to the album, I'm sold. Harvest works extremely well in the fluidity that the album has. I still think that it's perhaps a song that when it was thrown out there as a single, caught people by surprise. It caught me by surprise. I wasn't really ready for that track. Listening to the album and listening to the album in its continuous format from the first song to the last song, that song is so robust, is so melodic. It has a place there. It definitely is one of the strong songs and one of the songs that really sets the album apart, and it gives that sense of creativity, of just not putting any boundaries whatsoever on where you're going to go with the sound, with the vocal approach on this record. To me, that song is extremely strong, and I apologize for everything bad that I said about that track previously, but once again, this album shows that you cannot look at songs individually. I really feel like this is not an album for singles, even though I just said it feels like a collection of singles or singles that were created for the specific band members. Having said that, this is an album that really plays well if you listen to from the first song to the last song. Harvest is a perfect example of that. In the context of the album, magnificent track. It just works at all levels, musically and vocally. When you look at that song taken out of the context of the album, is a much different track. It almost sounds like a complete different song out of context versus in context of the album. I love this song now that I had the chance to listen to the whole album from first to last. But like I was saying, having three vocalists is really important, really gives a lot of dynamic, it really gives a lot of freedom on when they can use one versus the other in certain parts of the song, use a different vocal approach, a different style that really emphasizes the lyrics or the atmosphere that they really want to pass across with that specific track. Obviously, Floor is the main vocalist of the band, so she definitely gets the majority of the work as far as vocals are concerned, but having two other vocalists and having a vocalist like Marco, for example, that has a much deeper, more somber approach to his style really adds something else to the overall feel that this album has. Very cinematic at times, really heavy as well. This is an album that has some really heavy banger kind of tracks where the guitars and the drums just come at you like just thunder. It's just so much power in the sound of the guitars and drums. Like I said, everybody gets a piece, everybody gets a chance to shine, and that goes across every single member of the band. I just felt the album overall was very robust in the sound. They did a magnificent job creating songs that were heavy, creating songs that were a little bit more cinematic with a lot of symphonic orchestration that really elevates the style, the aroma of the tracks, and then a lot of tribal elements. When you look at the drums and you look at this album, to me they really went with a different approach on a few tracks on disc one, really giving this tribal feel, a more robust, solid sound to the drums that perhaps not as used in previous albums. It just really has a different sense. It almost brings not just a tribal feel, but it brings the drums down to nature and the spot in nature where mankind and nature come together and become one. The drums really have that approach, they really have that sound across a few tracks on that first disc, and to me that's really important. It really enhances the overall sound, it enhances the overall presence, and it enhances the richness, the texture of the music on this first disc. Absolutely phenomenal. It's an incredible journey, it's an incredible ride, and I cannot get enough of it. It's really hard to pick favorite songs out of that disc one. Every single song is a magnificent song, but to me, more important, it's like choosing which finger you like the least or which child you like the least. This first disc, these 9 tracks, should all be heard as 1 to 9. I have to emphasize this because I really feel that you're gonna lose something if you're listening to them segregated from each other or not in the right order. There are some important nuances that really travel from song to song, either be a vocal style, a vocal approach, a keyboard melody, or the way the guitar sound or the drum sound on a specific portion. I feel like it's very important to listen to this album from first to last in order to get the full essence of the record, because it really feels like one full song broken into 9 individual chapters. Disc 2 is Nature. Instrumental, 30 minutes of instrumental. There are some vocals in it, but it's more of a narrator's voice. It's not really singing per se. It really is. It's just a style, a different vocal approach, just narrating a story. So I like that approach. It adds almost a National Geographic feel to that second disc. And that to me works because the music is absolutely beautiful. The instrumental tracks are phenomenal. 30 minutes that go by in a blink of an eye. It's just absolutely incredible how that second disc, while being separated from the first disc, because I really feel like these are 2 separate entities, they still complement each other so well while being so different and so far apart sometimes. There are still some elements, perhaps emotional elements from the first disc that are present in the second disc and vice versa. Not as much musically, but really emotionally. I really feel there's an emotional connection between the 2 discs, and that to me is an important aspect of this album. Overall, this is it's a magnificent Nightwish album. I really feel like there's going to be some people who are not going to gravitate towards this album because they're going to say that this is perhaps not the Nightwish that they were hoping for, or not the sound that they wanted. This album has a very different idea, has a very, I don't want to use the word concept, but it has a very different concept going into it. And like I said, you have to really listen to it from first to last in order to understand the whole fluidity of it. You have to look at this as the greatest hits of the band with new songs where you use the best out of each and every single member to create these magnificent singles, if you will, that are all part of one much larger entity. You really have to look at the album from that perspective. You can't just look at this album and compare it with previous albums. I don't feel like they've ever done anything like this before, creating a record geared to each and every single member, where each and every single member plays a main character role, not a supporting cast, not an extra in a movie. Every single member of the band on this album has a main role to play. They have a single, at least one single, and they all have a main role to play in the overall sound, feel, atmosphere of the album. As far as songs are concerned, really hard to do to pick favorites, but there are 3 songs that immediately as I went through the album the first time, I gravitated towards. Shoemaker was the first one that I really enjoyed, a song that has a great presence. The drums and the symphonic elements really set the backdrop of this track. They become the spinal cord, if you will, of the song. The vocals are phenomenal. Floor feeds melody into the heaviness that sometimes comes across. And then having different layers, having 2 vocalists on this track really adds a lot of texture, it adds a lot of melody, it adds a lot of presence, and in my opinion really elevates the overall spirit of the song. The narrator voice that they introduce adds a great bridge, really phenomenal. It brings a little bit of a somber vibe, it brings a little bit of, the mood becomes a little bit darker when that narrator bridge comes in, but then afterwards Floor takes over and it's just absolutely a masterpiece, a vocal masterpiece. The way this song ends is absolutely glorious and magnificent. It gives you chills, the closing of this track. Next, Pen. The keyboard melody on this song is a Jekyll and Hyde track. It starts off with this great keyboard melody that really feels like fairy dust being sprinkled, and then Floor's vocal sounds like that same fairy that's sprinkling the dust is skipping through in between raindrops. That's the feel that you get from the opening of this song, and it's the feeling that you're going to get from the verses of this song. The song becomes a lot more robust towards the chorus. The chorus is a lot more heavy, a lot darker, has a lot more aggression, and that is the dynamic that this song has that is so great. It's this complete Jekyll and Hyde perspective between the verses and the chorus, combining the more stripped down, melodic, almost Disney cinematic feel of the verses with a more over the top, more aggressive, heavy, more emotionally driven choruses. Great song, great dynamic, really powerful and majestic, and I love the abrupt changes between those 2 different worlds. They really come colliding, and not having a smooth transition works really well. It really resets the song every single time you go through the chorus. Endlessness, this is the last song on the album, and this is the song that closes disc 1 and gives Marco a chance to really shine on the vocal side of things. Great melody with this song. It has just a great feel. Marco just outdoes himself on this song. Absolutely a song that was built, in my opinion, designed around his vocal performance. Knowing exactly how his voice sounds, knowing exactly what he can do with his vocals, they created a song that just really enhanced that level, that strength, that warmth that he has in his voice. You're still going to get some moments with Floor coming in. There's some choirs in the track, and in my opinion, that just adds to the overall texture and feel that the song has. It makes it a little bit more rich, it makes it a little bit more thick, it gives a little bit more volume to the track, but the song is really about Marco and how he delivers it. There is some bite on the guitars. There's some points where the song, this is not a fast-paced song, it's not a really heavy moving track, but there are some portions of the song where the guitars have a little bit more bite, a little bit more presence, but overall is a really slow and melodic and methodic song. It has a great cinematic feel, and a huge part of that is because of the symphonic elements that it has, but also the vocal layers that they use in the choirs. It really gives this song this larger-than-life presence. And then the closing The same way Shoemaker ends with Floor with this magnificent vocal performance to close off the track, this one ends with Marco's vocal performance and with these choirs coming in. Just a lot of strength vocally to close off this track that will also give you goosebumps. Absolutely magnificent. There are some familiarities as far as the structure is concerned between Shoemaker and this one, but there is enough there. There are enough things to keep it apart and to make these two songs very independent from each other, even though they have very similar closings. This is it. This is Nightwish with Human Nature. Once again, out right now on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the singles, on the songs, on anything you want to talk about on this record. I really want to hear your opinions on it, and I want to see if you agree with me on the points that I've put forward. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.